Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Comics Gatecrashers. This is Shanth and Jetty. I am the artist, writer, and creator of a book called Nosfero, the Crypt. It's funding right now on Indiegogo, and there's a link for it in the description. Go check it out and back it. We have just hit, as of this morning, early this morning, double the amount of backers that we had on my largest campaign. So thank you to everybody in CG. Thank you to all my backers for making Nosfero the success that it is. Onward and upward. Let's make this thing happen. So with this second episode of Comics Gatecrashers, I wanted to talk a little bit about a phenomenon that I heard about a while back, of a lion that had been trapped in an incredibly small enclosure. And all day long, it just sort of paced inside of that small enclosure. Wasn't allowed to leave. Sometimes it would just sit there. Sometimes it would just, rock back and forth, but it was trapped in this small enclosure for its entire life. So eventually, the lion was rescued, and the cage door was open so the lion could go free. And it kept doing the exact same routine it did when the cage door was closed. That world had been so habituated to that lion, even though the cage door was open, didn't realize that it could leave, and psychologically could not wrap its mind around leaving. And it got me thinking about this idea of being a caged lion. And this got me thinking about Comicsgate. This got me thinking about CG, this got me thinking about independent comics, and it started me thinking about this idea of the possibilities of your art form. That was one of those things that inspired me to launch my Comicsgate project, Nosfero, the Crypt. I wanted to put this out there in case anybody needs to hear it, or if it might spark some creativity, so here we go. When I first started creating stuff for my Comicsgate book, the first thing I did was I went through all of these story ideas, all of these plot ideas, but then I had to take a moment and say, wait a second. I am the editor. The people who are backing this book are expecting me to create something that's beautiful and evocative and free. What a genre had to be, what you should and shouldn't do, all of the rules that really creative works get to break. Now, this may seem like a simple thing, but it's really tough when you've conditioned yourself to work inside of a particular structural limitation. A creative cage, if you will. You are basically a caged lion when it comes to your imagination, when it comes to your creativity. And on Nosfero the Crypt, one of the things that I ran into was I was trying to think about, would that work? Would that happen in this book? Would this happen in this book? How would you do this? And what would somebody, when has this been done in the past? And you can always find examples of things being done in the past. The problem is the freedom to decide which ones you're going to use. When I was creating Nosfero, I found myself thinking, maybe I should have this element of this genre in there. Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should put this into here. And at first, I was starting with a very basic story idea with some simple things. And then I started thinking, why am I not putting things into it and then seeing how I can make the most compelling story possible with the most interesting visuals? So to give you an example of that, throwing something against the wall as hard as I can, is this piece right here. I don't know if I've seen this in a book before, but that doesn't matter. It's how far are you allowed to push things beyond the standard genre? And the answer for me on Nosfero is pretty darn far. And I always have to remind myself that this is an indie book and that we are free to create things. That might seem like an easy prospect, but it's not. How big can the creatures be? How big can the scope be? Well, how well can you draw and paint? How large of a scope do you want to create in? And these are questions that we often don't think about when we're working because we're so used to doing things in a certain way. I wanted to tip this panel sideways so that I have these characters who are actually standing on their side who represent our ground plane, and this creature that's moving up from the other sphere that it's coming out from, or the other world it's coming out from, and it's tipped to the side to show that up and down have no meaning in its world. Now, that's not something that's never been done before in comics, but it's something that I found myself going, well, can I do that? Is that allowed? And I thought, of course it's allowed. It's creative, it's fun, it's what my impulse was. Stop editing the impulse to do something that's interesting and creative. And you'll find that throughout Nosfero. You'll find that throughout a lot of the CG books that you're seeing right now. But it does take a little bit of a creative step when you're used to doing things a certain way. How can you create an environment where you're free? So what I wanted to talk about, and that, by the way, that doesn't just mean, I'm going to show nudity or violence or whatever, although that's not to say there's not going to be those things in my book. It also means you can show things that you wouldn't think to put in with that stuff. You can show sexiness. You can show the divine. You can show humility. You are free creatively. You can hand letter your logo in gouache and then bring it into the computer and redesign it in Illustrator. There's so many things you can do in terms of tools, resources, creative exploration. And if you're in that caged lion mentality, You're just pasting inside of, let's say, that panel border that you've been doing your entire life. So the whole point of being independent is you are free creatively. So today I wanted to show an artist who really inspired my leap into CG, interestingly enough. And that is an artist that I was talking about with some people in my chat the other night on my channel. So please subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment if you have not yet. This is a Angoulême retrospective on Richard Corben. It's a beautiful art book showcasing his career of work. He passed away shortly after the exhibition and the publishing of this book. But let's talk a little bit about the glory of underground comics. Let's talk a little bit about what is possible when you think about underground comics. And you think about independent comics too. This is an art form where you can really do anything. You can really illustrate anything. And there is no artist I can think of. I mean, there's possibly a few. Mobius comes to mind. Who better instills that than Richard Corben? With his adventure, with his quirkiness, with the excitement of his work, Richard Corben really showed us what is possible. Fun, playful, irreverent, exciting, interesting, compelling, brilliant work. Look at the handmade quality of this. Isn't this what we're doing every time we sit down and we try to figure out, how can I adjust the colors and get the files ready for print? We're always looking at new ways of doing these things. And this is the thing that excites me the most about being a part of Comicsgate, is stepping outside of that cage of creativity, of imagination, of what you can and can't say. Not just to be, well, I'm not allowed to say this, so I'm just going to say it. Although if that's what you want to do with that ability, or if that's what you want to do with that freedom, you're more than welcome to do that. But what I am here to say is, take it as a challenge to be creative. Take it as a challenge to push your work in interesting and exciting directions, to show the audience what we can do that the mainstream publishers can't do. That can be in terms of the quality we put into the book, the time we spend on the books to make them great, but it can also be in terms of the maturity of subject matter and putting disparate elements together that people think just can't go together. The dominant concepts of the thought police, of the SJWs, is that different things can't go together. Different things are so fundamentally different, they can't understand each other, they can't coexist, which is the opposite of the kind of philosophy that this country is founded on, and in many ways, true creativity, true liberty is founded on. And so I want you guys to remember that we are not in a cage here when we're creating independent books, when we're in CG. We're in a place where the sky is the limit. It's how far do you want to go creatively, how far do you want to go technically, and the only objective is to make beautiful books, respect the fan base, and create work that people are going to look at and say, I can't get this anywhere else outside of independent comics. And that's what we're here to do. And so this is an example of Richard Corben's brilliant work, how he put this stuff together, how we made magic happen on the page, and it's one of my big inspirations as an artist going forward. So what I want to make sure you're thinking about when you wake up to do your work, when you go to your board, or when you go to back books, the biggest thing I want you to remember is you are not in that cage lion mentality, and start making work that just is evocative, is exciting, is vital, that you couldn't do anywhere else. That couldn't be done anywhere else, won't exist anywhere else unless you make it. Unless you make something that's exciting, inspiring, creative, heartwarming, creepy, whatever it is you want to do. And I will tell you this, I'm going to follow the lead of these creators who push the envelope, and I hope you will too. So this has been Comics' Gatecrashers. My name is Shanth and Jetty. Back Nosfero, guys. We are doing great on that campaign, and I'll be back with another video soon. Keep it creative, stay gold, and take care. Nosfero the Crypt Walker Volume 1 is my third Indiegogo campaign and will be a fully painted and lavishly illustrated pulp adventure story. Sensational, vivid, and uncompromisingly aspirational storytelling with an edge. Don't miss your chance to back Nosfero the Crypt Walker Volume 1. Available for a limited time only on Indiegogo.
King Kong ain't got nothing
Easy.